Hello, vinyl community. We are back. I know it's been a little while, but we've had some transition things going on for me and for my family as well. I started a new job towards the beginning of this year and also did a little bit of traveling for that new job in the past couple of weeks. And whenever I travel, I also like to look for vinyl. So I'm always on the hunt. And I visited Salt Lake City and I found some great records in Salt Lake City. And I visited Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I also got some great records from there as well. So I'm just going to share my recent finds with you on this video, talk about them, and that's going to be kind of it. I'm going to do a little spotlight on an individual as well as I carry through this. But without further ado, let's start off. So, like I said, I went to Salt Lake City, and the record shop that I want to give a shout out to that had the best selection for me for what I'm interested in was called Randy's Records. They've been around since 1978. They have a fantastic selection, lots of good stuff. I spent quite a bit of time there, and I'll just go ahead and show you some of my finds. So the first one I got was Miss Chris Clark, which everybody was so excited about last time I talked about Chris Clark. So this is her second album, and this one is not on Motown. It's actually on a subsidiary of Motown called Weed Records, which, funny enough, they started this label just for her. And so it started and ended with her. So as far as I know, this is the only album that is on this Weed label, which, like I said, was a subsidiary of Motown. So this album came out in 1969. It's okay. It's not as good as her first album. The thing I like more probably is the gatefold. The gatefold is pretty cool. The inside of it is as well. This one you can also pick up for quite a bit cheaper than her debut album. But is it essential? I'd say probably not. Is it a fun thing to have? For sure, especially with it being on that one and only Weed label. I think it's kind of, I don't know why they picked Weed. That's kind of funny. But anyways, that was one of the first picks I got from Randy's. And then the other one I got here is called East. And this album is from 1972. And this is a Japanese band. It's on the Capitol label. And it's really cool because it is, it's folk, it's psych, but they don't really play the contemporary instruments. They play all Japanese instruments. But the funny part about it is it sounds like they're playing all the typical traditional instruments that would be played on a psych album of this time frame and earlier. So they do a really good job of blending that in or marrying that in. I don't know how rare this one is, but it is really, really fantastic. If you can stream it, I would do that. If you find it, grab it. It's great. All right, another one I got from Randy's. Kicks. This is Kicks' second album, and Kicks were from Baltimore. They were glam rock, hard rock. This one's from 1983. They had a hit with Body Talk. They had a hit with Locomotion. And this, again, is probably not their most popular or not their most essential, but it was a fun one to pick up. And I'm a completist, so obviously I've got to try to grab all the kicks I can. So, all right, here's a big one that I got from Randy's that I've been looking for quite a while. It's the first Groundhogs album, Scratching the Surface. This is the US pressing here on the World Pacific label. And I've got most of the Groundhogs albums, but I do not have this one. This one is really good. It's blues rock. They're from the UK. The main songwriter for all of this is Mr. Tony McPhee. He's right there, and he is kind of he's the glue of the band. He's the vocalist. He writes the songs, and typically they were a power trio throughout most of their albums and most of their career. This is a rare instance where they've got four players on their first album, but this is absolutely fantastic. I've been looking for this one for quite some time, so really happy to find that one. All right. Still in Salt Lake City, we've got Fort Knox. Some 80s metal, 1982. This band was from Atlanta, Georgia. They're on the Epic label, and they only had this one album, and it's really good. And they actually toured with Aerosmith. They toured with Cheap Trick. They toured with April Wine, and they never took off for whatever reason. And I think the label didn't push them as hard as they should have, and it's unfortunate because it'd been really fun to hear another album from them. So, all right, now we're gonna move out of Fort Lauderdale, and we're gonna go to no, sorry, out of Salt Lake City, and we're gonna move to Fort Lauderdale. And I picked up a lot of albums at different shops in Fort Lauderdale, but where I had the most success was actually a little further south in North Miami. And the name of that record store is called Found Sound. And that guy has everything. I spent a lot of time there. He has grails on grails on grails, and he has sealed records, sealed grails, all kinds of stuff. So it was a really tough place for me because there's a lot of things I wanted, but I had to obviously pick and choose carefully, as I'm on a budget, as I'm sure many of you are too when you're looking out there in the wild. So, all right, the first thing I found at Found Sound is the very first edition with Mr. Kenny Loggins. And this one's probably not a huge deal to most of you out there, but this is harder to find, especially on the original Reprise label. And this is their first album. It's from 1967. And you probably know the hit, Just Dropped In to See What My Condition Was In, which was a big hit for them, big hit for Kenny Rogers, and was featured on The Big Lebowski, which most people are familiar with. They also had they had a minor hit as well with I think it was Dream On. I think was the name of that one. Yeah, Dream On was another one that was a minor hit. But both of those songs were sung by Kenny Loggins, and so Kenny Loggins was kind of the standout from the band. So they just had, I think, 2 or 3 more albums before they changed the name of the band to Kenny Loggins and the First Edition because he was the star attraction. So, anyways, I've been looking for this one for a long time, so really happy to pick it up, and it really was not that expensive. I think it was under $10. It was 8, so I'm happy with that. All right, another one that I didn't know that I would find, but I was happy to find. It's the second Butthole Surfers album, and this one is called Rembrandt Pussy Horse. And this is a pretty hard one to find. It's on the Touch and Go label, and it's good. It has depends on how familiar you are with the Butthole Surfers, but they started out as really punk and experimental. This one's more like psyche and on the garage side, and it's really fun, and it's pretty hard to find the original pressing of it. I'll show you the Touch and Go label, which is pretty cool. Got 2 different colors there. These guys were from San Antonio, Texas. This one came out in 1986. Like I said, it was their second album. Was not expecting to find this one in Florida, but I was very happy that I did. All right. now we're going to do a far change from the Butthole Surfers. We've got a little bit of jazz, Grand Encounter. This one's on Pacific Jazz. It's from 1956, and this is the original mono pressing. And this has got a lot of different players on it. And the really cool thing about this album is it's a East meets West. So you see 2 Degrees East. So these are all the players from the East Coast, primarily coming out of New York, right? John Lewis, Percy Heath, and then you have 3 Degrees West, which is the players that were coming out of the West Coast, primarily LA and San Francisco. And you have Bill Perkins, Chico Hamilton, and Jim Hall. And this thing is just in fantastic shape for 1956. I think I had to glue the top of it, but just really beautiful. And for you label heads out there, I'll show you the Pacific Jazz label. Chet Baker was on he had a lot of Pacific Jazz titles as well. Really like the label. The nice deep groove there. Nice dark matte black with silver lettering. This is just a really beautiful album. And again, not something I was necessarily looking for, but I guess it kind of jumped out and attacked me. So I had to get after it. So now we're going to take another big deviation. This is kind of a little bit of a schizo order here, but there's a method to the madness. Next one is The Fallen Angels. So now we're getting into straight psych. This is from 1967. It's their first album. They were from Baltimore. It's on the Roulette label there. And this is another found sound one. And this is, he had several copies. It's in the shrink, which is, it's silly. And this is a good album. It's not as popular or sought out as their second album, but it's also very good. And it's psyche, it's garagey, and it's, for a lot of people, it's a grail. So I was extremely pleased to find it. Really happy to add it to my collection. I actually had somebody that asked me a while back, after doing a video, if I could do a full catalog psych flip through, like A to Z. And that is something that I am happy to entertain, but it would take me quite a while to get it all together. It would take me some prep time. So I am happy to entertain that, but it's going to be a while. It's probably not going to be the next video. Anyways, back to the records. Now we've got Ike Turner and the Kings of Rhythm, A Black Man's Soul. This album is awesome. It's from 1969. It's on Pompeii Records, which was a subsidiary of Atlantic and Atco. And this thing is a smoker. This one, again, this guy had so much stuff in the shrink. I don't know how he got it or where he got it, but I was really happy to find it. But this isn't your typical Ike and Tina. This is all instrumental, really funky. And I'd say if you're interested in jazz, or you're interested in soul jazz, or dipping your toes in the water, this is an awesome place to start. This thing smokes. Absolutely fantastic. And I think if you're worried about whether you're going to like jazz or not, you'll like this. This is for everybody. Oh, and I want to mention that Jurassic 5 sampled the song Get Nasty for their first EP, Concrete Schoolyard, so, which is fun as well. And they're from Clarksdale, Mississippi. All right, now I've got one that I'm really excited about that I didn't really expect to find, but this is John Corneal's. It's his first solo album that he did, and it's called John Corneal and the Orange Blossom Special. And he recorded this in 1973, It came out in 1974, and it's on this Auburn Orange Records, which I don't know if there was another album on that. I actually got this sealed, and I had to open it up because if it's sealed, I'm gonna either open it up or I'm gonna sell it. I don't believe in leaving them sealed sitting around, but I'll show you the orange label. It's pretty cool here. So this is your country rock, alt country. This is bluegrass, and you might say, why do I know John Cornel, or why does John Cornel ring a bell? Well, he's from Auburndale, Florida, which is where he recorded this. He recorded this at home, which is near Lakeland, Florida. It's between Tampa and Orlando, I believe. But he was friends with Graham Parsons. And Graham Parsons had him play on the International Submarine Band. He was a drummer. He was right there. So this guy cut his teeth on what became like the original cosmic country or the alt country back in the day. He touched all the major albums in my mind. So this was the first his first foray into something on the alt country side with Graham Parsons, International Submarine Band, and then he left the International Submarine Band, and he went on. Graham called him back, and he played drums on this album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, when Graham was there for like roughly a year. So he was involved with this album too, which is absolutely monumental. And then he went back to Florida, and then Graham called him back again. He said, "Hey, I need you to play on this album." So he played drums on the Flying Burrito Brothers' Gilded Palace of Sin, which is a absolute masterpiece as the cosmic country goes. And so he's in that album as well. It doesn't stop there. He also played drums on Warren Zevon's first solo album, Wanted Dead or Alive, on Imperial. And then he wasn't on the first Dillard and Clark album, which is better, but he was on the second. He played drums on the second Dillard and Clark album as well. So this guy had a heck of a career for not really being a big name, and I think he was in the right place at the right time, and I'm sure being friends with Graham Parsons was a big feather in his cap and kind of pushed him in the right direction. So, but the fun part about his solo album is he plays guitar and he sings, and he wanted to do all that when he was in those groups, but they just had him drum. So you get to hear what he actually wanted to do, and it's really fun. Okay, now since we've deviated, we'll go. We'll keep moving on here. Another one I've got. This one was in Fort Lauderdale. Stiletto. Blame It on Youth. This one came out in 1987. Heavy metal band from San Jose, and this was the only album that they did. This was a fun one. I'm a big fan of stuff that came out of areas where I lived, and San Jose wasn't too far from where I lived in Marin, so it was something I wanted to pick up, and it's a fun album, and it wasn't that expensive. So, okay, we're still working on finds. Another found sound one. Fire. It's a self-titled album, ABC. It's blues rock, psych rock. It actually has more of a soul tinge than anything else. Not a lot's known about this band. And more than anything, the fun part that I think about this, it's actually more fun than the music, is the cover looks like a matchbook, right? So there's the strike there, and you open it up, and there are matchsticks inside, which is it's really clever. I wish the music was as cool as the Unipack cover here, but unfortunately, it's not. But I've been looking for this one for a while. This was at Found Sound. Again, very reasonable, very cheap. So had to pick it up. Another one that really wasn't on my list, but I came across it was Blue Cheer's final album. This one came out in 1985. It's their seventh album, and it's uh, it's mostly re-recordings of what they've done previously. And this one's called Blue Cheer. The Beast is back. So it's kind of a double entendre over there, right? The Beast is scratching this woman's back. But the cool part that I like about it is they got on the Megaforce label for this one, which I love the Megaforce label. Is this essential? No. Is this amazing? No. But Blue Cheer was from San Francisco, and I'm a completist, so now I got them all. All right, we're gonna delve back into jazz now, so hopefully you guys don't tune out or fall asleep. But I've got Benny Golson, Turning Point. This one came out in 1963. It's on Mercury Records, and this was a quartet with Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb. And this is a really nice album. Didn't expect to find this one either. This is just a really easy, nice listen. And I would say too, the nice part about Mercury is they're not necessarily known for their jazz titles. So sometimes when you have uh, labels that don't put out a lot of jazz, you can get relatively good deals on them, and the music's fantastic. So this is definitely one of those cases, and I really like Benny Golson. I've got quite a few of his other albums, so it was a no-brainer for me to pick it up. I usually prefer mono. This one's stereo, but I'll live. Okay, now we are going to, those are all my travel finds. Now these are all going to be local finds and local finds, eBay, and the like, right? So I picked up Living Color, Vivid. This is an awesome album from 1988 on Epic Records. It's funk, metal. This is their first album. There's just shredding guitar on this. And it's really awesome. Beautiful Epic label there. And this one is kind of unique too, because the band was all black, and at the time there really wasn't a lot of African American artists that were making this kind of music, so they were definitely pushing some boundaries and taking some chances, and it paid off because this is a really fantastic album. Really cool cover too. All right, another local find, In Excess X. This is from 1990 on Atlantic Records. It's their seventh album. Love that Michael Hutchence is still around for that. Miss that guy so much. Such an amazing frontman. And they're from Australia, as most of us know. They had a hit with Suicide Blonde and Disappear. And the reason that it's called X is because this came out in 1990, and their first album came out 10 years prior, so 1980. So they named this album X. And it's really good. It's a really good follow-up to Kick, and it's kind of creeping up there a little bit more in price, but if you find it, it's well worth it. All right, now we're gonna go back to Berkeley. Merle Saunders, Jerry Garcia live at Keystone. This is all cover songs, every one of them, but they're done in a real funky, soulful way. This one came out in 1973. This is pretty sought after. It's a double album. It's really good. It also has John Cann and Bill Vitt performing as well. But they do songs like Positively 4th Street from Bob Dylan, takes a lot to laugh. It takes a train to cry. That's all right, Mama. And so they're doing a ton of Bob Dylan. My Funny Valentine. So it's really good. If you see this or if you see anything with Merle Saunders, period, pick it up. Merle Saunders and Jerry Garcia, winner every time. All right, we're gonna take a hard right with Iron Maiden, Power Slave. I've been trying to get into Iron Maiden. Their albums are pretty hard to find, so I was able to find this one. This is the original US pressing with the textured sleeve. And this is awesome. Bruce Dickinson, his voice is amazing. This is their fifth album. This was ranked 38th on Rolling Stone's 100 best metal albums of all time. So I think that kind of speaks for itself, right? Enough said. Sorry, we're gonna get back into jazz for you people that don't like jazz, but this is Sun Ra, Astro Black. I'm actually gonna take this one out. This is Space Jazz, Free Jazz from 1973. I got this one locally too. You see him in there. This is really, really cool stuff. It's really far out there and really different than traditional jazz and any other genres of jazz. And he's a character. He's awesome. And I think this one's on the Impulse, ABC Impulse. And it's quadraphonic compatible, which is fantastic, but I don't have the capability to do quadraphonic. This is a really good album. If you're into free jazz, if you're into space jazz, Sun Ra is the master of that. And the next album that I have is also in that same vein. It's less free jazz, but it has a Sun Ra connection. And it's Batman and Robin. So this one seems a little goofy, right? This one's from 1966. It's on Tifton. And it's a little harder to find, but it's the sensational guitars of Dan and Dale. And really what this was Sun Ra was performing on this in his orchestra, and also had the Blues Project band on this as well. And so they did a few albums and a few commercial things under this moniker of the sensational guitars of Dan and Dale. So that's not a band, the Dan and Dale. It's like they're ghostwriting, right? So it's actually Sun Ra and the Blues Project. But this is a really fun album, especially if you're a fan of Batman and all the kitschy comic pulp stuff back in the day. It's really fun. So keep your eye out for that one. Okay, we are moving on. We got one that I was really excited to find, Hawkwind's third album. This is actually the UK pressing on United Artists. And the fun fact about this one, it's the first album to feature Lemmy before he went on to the fame with Motorhead. And it's really similar. The packaging and everything is pretty similar to the US pressing, which is what I had before. But I'm selling that one because this one came with a poster, what I'm going to show you. That's not with the US pressing, which is really cool. Let's see if I can get it all in frame here for y'all. And it says Star Rats on it. Check that out. Look at the sinister skulls. We got Lemmy in there as well. Some good stuff. I was super stoked to find that in there because that's one of those things where if something's missing, it's usually going to be a poster, right? And this is in pretty nice shape, especially considering that it's as old as it is. So was very, very happy to find that and very surprised to find that one locally, actually. So that was a nice score. Right, another one that is pretty rare that I found as well is the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Mother's Milk. This is their fourth album from 1989. And in my opinion, this is where they really kind of started to take off. But tragedy struck before that. Their guitarist Hillel Slovak died of a heroin overdose, and so the back here you can see the covers dedicated to him, and that's one of his paintings. And so what happened was John Frusciante had to come in and he filled in as a guitarist, so he became the new guitarist. And then their drummer left as well, and so the drummer became Chad Smith. And the fun fact about Chad Smith is he's from St. Paul, Minnesota. He's still with the Chili Peppers to this day. He's still their drummer. So, and they did have some minor hits on here. They had a cover of Stevie Wonder's "Higher Ground," and yeah, it's funk metal, but this is where things start to take off for them in my mind. And their next album, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, is where they blow up into the stratosphere, right? So this is the one right prior to this, and it's good, and you can definitely hear where they're headed. Okay, next album we've got a prog album, Pacific Drift. This is a prog band out of the UK. No big surprise there. This is the US pressing on Duram. This is from 1970, and this is a great album, and it's not really hard prog leaning. There are some hard rock um, and other tendencies that are not prog. That it's relatively easy to listen to. And again, I would say this is a great one if you're a little nervous about prog or you're thinking, hey, it's not for me. This is a pretty easy one to cut your teeth on. And I think this one's gettable. It's out there, so definitely check it out if you're interested. Okay, let's go over to Germany. Accept, Metal Heart, 1985, their sixth album. It's on Portrait, and I really, really like Accept. And this one's nice too. It's in the shrink. Get the hype sticker there too as well. And I found this guy locally as well. And they had a hit with Metal Heart. This was somewhat panned at the time, but Metal Heart was a hit for them. Also, Living for Tonight, and it's just a great Accept album. We're getting there. Hang in there. Okay, now we're gonna go to Salinas from Brazil. This is Daniel Salinas. The album's called Atlantis, and he's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And this is jazz, Latin, funk, soul, and it's on the Cadet label. I think he had a few albums. This is the only one that you can really kind of get in the US or get a US pressing of. It's a white label promo. I'll show you that beauty there. And this thing is it's awesome. It's really good. And I'd say this is another one if you're not sure about jazz or you're thinking, hey, it's not for me. I think something like this can bridge the gap and definitely make you feel more comfortable about dipping your toes into the jazz waters. The only one that I'm not a big fan of, he does a cover of Simon Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. That's the only one that's a skip for me on this, but everything else is amazing. This one came out in 1973, if I didn't mention that. Okay, now we're going to jump way, 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 way in the future with Prince's The Gold album. This one's from 1995. And this is his first album where he went by this symbol, which was very tricky for everybody, right? Because when you're uh, working at a radio station or you're working at a record store, you can't just put a symbol, right? You can't say the symbol. So they started giving him the moniker, the artist formerly known as Prince. And this was also a time when he was kind of battling with Warner Brothers. So he had slave written on the side of his face. So this is a really awesome album though, and the only way you could get this was the promo. It's a double album, and that's what this is. So you can see the number down here, 2465, and then it's a double album, and it's on this pretty cool gold vinyl. So this one's a very tricky one to find, but I was happy to find it because I was a big fan of this one back in the day. So I'm really stoked to have it on vinyl. All right, another big deviation. We're gonna go from Prince to Dolly, my girl Dolly Parton. Love, love, love Dolly Parton. This is her debut album on Monument. It's the only one she had on Monument as well. It's called Hello, I'm Dolly, and it came out in 1967. She had hit with Dumb Blonde, and she also had a hit with Something Fishy. I'll show you the label here. But this is the one that kind of started her off. Then she started doing a bunch of albums with Porter Wagoner as well. And those albums are fine too. I like Dolly's solo stuff better. But this was a really fun get for me because I'm trying to get as much Dolly as I can. So can't get enough. All right, I just have a couple more for you. This one's called Surprise. I got this one sealed. The band's called The Oneness. The album's called Surprise. And this is a local prog rock album, actually. Came from Minneapolis. And this one came out in 1975. And I'll show you the cover. The cover is awesome. Look at that thing. And the music is, it fits the imagery, right? This is kind of spacey, kind of out there prog. It's good stuff though, and I really didn't think that we had any local acts that were making this kind of music, not even back in the day. And I was pleasantly surprised I was wrong. So I think I got this one on eBay. I didn't get it locally, but it was sealed, so that was really fun to get it. Okay, I just have two left for you. Got Gravy Train. Here's another prog for you. This one is so good. This is their first album. This one came out in 1971, I believe. And this is the US pressing. Still in the shrink. And they're a little bit known for their second album, A Ballad of a Peaceful Man. It's a little bit more popular. It's also a little lighter prog. This one's heavy, hard rocking. Again, if you're not 100% sold on prog, I think this is a good one. And this one has, if you like Jethro Tull, there's a lot of stuff on here that sounds like Jethro Tull. There's quite a few songs that have the flute on it. And it's a really fun album. I think I got this one on eBay as well. It's really good. Check it out. All right, the last one I've got for you is my most recent pickup. We're gonna end with soul. Everybody seems to love the soul, so I've got Curtis Mayfield, "Something to Believe In." This is, I think, like his 16th album. I haven't even really listened to this one all the way through, so I'll report back to you on the next one to see to let you know what we got going on with it. But this is actually the white label promo, and I love Curtis Mayfield. This one's from 1980. It's fantastic. It's a return to form for him. Kind of ditched it, all the disco leanings that he had on some of the late 70s albums, and back to the silky, smooth, soul, sultry stuff. Absolutely fantastic. But as usual, it looks like we went a little long here. So thank you for sticking with me. We will get another video out that will be not as big of a lapse as we had last time. So I don't want to keep you hanging. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.